These two iPhones right here are the best selling used iPhones on Amazon, and I can give you guys a quick second to guess which one of these is the best seller. If you guessed the iPhone 12, you'd be correct. In fact, the iPhone 12 is the best seller of all Amazon renewed listings, with the iPhone 13 ranking third. But did these people make the right decision choosing the iPhone 12, or is the iPhone 13 actually the better value? Well, I prepared this well-informed video to help you guys find out. We first need to start off why I believe the iPhone 12 was so popular. Back when the iPhone 12 was released, it was a huge upgrade compared to the iPhone 11 in terms of features people actually cared about. The screen was upgraded from an LCD screen to an OLED screen with 30% more pixel density, and it went from the iPhone lens 1400 to 1 contrast ratio all the way to a 2 million to 1 contrast ratio. The iPhone 12 2 also brought a more modern, boxier looking design that featured MagSafe compatibility to allow you to connect different accessories. Apple followed up this design a year later with the iPhone 13, which featured a diagonal camera layout, a smaller notch, a 10% increase in battery life, along with some other minor improvements. And come to think about it, it's kind of obvious why people choose the iPhone 12. Why pay $350 for a used iPhone 13 when you can get an iPhone 12 for only $250 that has a lot of the features that you really care about? So then why am I making this video? Well, I did some research and I found out some minor improvements that the iPhone 13 has, as well as some careful thinking that might actually make it a pretty good contender value-wise compared to the iPhone 12. And in this video, I dove deep and did quite a bit of research to give you guys a clear answer as to which two of these phones is the best value used iPhone to buy. I'm gonna go start off with the first major thing we all care about, performance. Typically, I break up performance into 4 categories: general performance, gaming, cellular speeds, and of course, battery life. I'm going to go start off with general performance, and any iPhone made within the last few years has done a really good job with this. And looking at these phones' processors, the iPhone 12 has the A14 Bionic chip with a 6-core CPU, 4 of them performance cores, 2 of them efficiency cores, along with a 4-core GPU and 16-core neural engine. The iPhone 13 seems to be a pretty similar story with the A15 Bionic chip. However, because it is newer silicon, it does have a leg up in performance. Taking a look at the Geekbench scores, the iPhone 13 scored a 5,499 multi-core score, whereas the iPhone 12 scored a 4,708 multi-core score. But how much of a difference does that actually make? Well, unfortunately not much. iPhone processors have gotten a lot better recently, and that big of a performance jump, while it does seem somewhat significant, isn't enough to notice a pretty big jump in general performance. It's not until you get into the Pro model iPhones with the 120Hz display where you really notice your phone to feel a lot smoother. They have these same chips all the way from 5G connectivity all the way to the ultra wideband chip, which honestly isn't great news for an iPhone 13, especially for something that you're paying $100 more for. But there's one major area the iPhone 13 has done exceptionally well in that I'm sure a lot of us can appreciate: battery life. The iPhone 13 was upgraded from the iPhone 12's 2,815 mAh battery to a bigger 3,227 mAh battery, overall about a 10% improvement, which really helps you ensure that you're getting a full day of use. And back when I had my iPhone 12, after a few years, I did notice it to start to end in the 10% range at the end of the day. Which leads me into another factor: battery degradation. Because this iPhone is a year older, there is a greater chance that it's going to have a more degraded battery, which is something to keep in mind because a new battery replacement from Apple costs $89. Another thing I want to mention here is software support. History has shown that iPhones with newer processors tend to receive the latest updates for longer, and I won't be surprised if the iPhone 13 receives another year of software support updates over the iPhone 12, which makes me think that the iPhone 13 still has a good 4 years of latest iOS updates left, but duh, it's a newer phone. So what other improvements does this iPhone 13 have? Well, what about design? What made the iPhone 12 stand out was a pretty drastic design change over the iPhone 11. The iPhone 13 closely resembles that design, but there are a few minor improvements. The display has a smaller notch and a raised max brightness from 625 nits to 800 nits. You also have more vibrant color options, which in my opinion stand out a bit more. And then of course, how can we not forget the tougher glass than any smartphone that Apple claims? But still, it's not enough. There has to be something else to decide clear winner here. So what about cameras? Both phones have 12 megapixel cameras along with the ultra wide lens brought by the iPhone 11, but the real difference is here is with photographic processing. The iPhone 13 has an improvement in HDR content with Smart HDR4, which is more advanced in skin tone optimization and contrast with different parts of a scene. And how can we not forget about photographic styles, which basically allows you to set different color presets for your camera, which is something I'm sure none of you have ever used before. Apple also added this thing called cinematic mode, which gives you a nice blur effect around subjects in 30 frames per second video, which is great for shooting a movie, but it's also something I'm sure you never really used your iPhone to do before. But I'll leave a list of all camera improvements up on screen if you're curious on what the iPhone 13 has, camera-wise, compared to the iPhone 12. There's also one major improvement that the iPhone 13 has that I couldn't really fit into a specific category in this video, and that's that it has a RAID-based storage from 64GB to 128GB, which back in the day when I bought my iPhone 12, I had to pay $100 extra to upgrade to. Now when you buy it used, it's about a $40 upgrade, but still that's a pretty big design factor, especially if you need more than 64GB on your iPhone. So far, here's a list of improvements that the iPhone 13 has that are actually appreciated by most people, but I feel like there's one major thing we didn't cover here, and that's depreciation. Looking at the depreciation curves, if you subtract the difference between the iPhone 13's current resale price minus a 3-year-old iPhone, that gets you $177. You do that same math with the iPhone 12 to the iPhone 8, and that gets you $161. If it's really going to cost you $20 to $30 extra to use an iPhone 13 over the course of the next 3 years, why not just spend that extra money and use that? This is also made better by the fact that after 3 years, the iPhone 13 is much more likely to be receiving the latest iOS updates, which is therefore going to make it a lot easier to resell. People are smart enough now to see what iPhones still receive the latest iOS updates, and it's kind of like buying a car of 50,000 miles or one of 80,000 miles, because you know that one of 50,000 miles is much more likely going to last longer and be easier to resell. So in conclusion here, I'd have to say the iPhone 13 is giving you the best value. However, the iPhone 12 is still a great phone for getting you a similar experience at a lower upfront cost. But I am curious though, what iPhone do you guys have and why did you justify buying it? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching and goodbye.